Hey there! Before we start the podcast, I need you to put down that wave bird and listen up. I need money. For a tenth of what the price of that wireless GameCube controller costs, that should be like $5 if you got it off Shop Goodwill. You can support me here at the podcast of Two Consoles Too Late. I need to buy more games. Your support gets bonus content like additional episodes, Discord server access, typewriter manifestos, and personal shoutouts on the airwaves. I actually have a typewriter. So I've decided to make the Patreon free, so all those bonus podcasts and typewriter manifestos, you can have them for free. But if you do support this podcast monetarily, I still will send you a signed postcard, a signed trading card, a Miracle of Save States magnet, and a shout out on the airwaves. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Two Consoles Too Late podcast. I'm the host, Jackson Keebler, and I am Two Consoles Too Late. What does that mean? Well, here at this podcast, we look at the classics and the not-so-classics of retro gaming, often for the very first time, and with no built-in nostalgia. And today, we're going back to 1998, to a game that blurred the line between cinematic storytelling and traditional RPG structure. We are going where the worst foe lies within the self. We're looking at Parasite Eve for the Sony PlayStation. And then later in the podcast, we're going to have a retrospective being the 150th episode of Two Consoles Too Late. And over on Auction Alert, we're going to see if there's any available copies of Parasite Eve on the Shop Goodwills. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go. All right, so a little housekeeping before we jump into the wonderful world of Parasite Eve. I got to stick it, and the stick it is going to whatever obstruction has entered my tire. I don't know what it is. It seems like whenever I buy new tires, within like 6 months, one of them's flat because of a nail or something. And it's usually unrepairable, non-repairable. I don't know what the word is. So anyway, I've got this tire, and every morning I have to fill it with air. So I have to go to the tire store, buy one tire. Of course, they're going to try to sell me fucking 2 tires. You know, and they're having a sale on 4 tires. I don't want 4 tires. I want the one tire that I bought less than a year ago to not be damaged. God damn it. So anyway, to the world, I have to say.
Stick it!
Oh. So it's going to be a $200 ordeal. So that means no long box games. Motherfucker. Anyway, let's do some going long.
Going long?
It is going long. Looking long.
Going long?
It is going long. Looking long.
All right, what's going on with the PS1 long box collection? Well, lots happened. In the past week, I have acquired 11 PS1 long box games, and you can hear all about it over at the Patreon at patreon.com/2consoles2late. But I'll give you the bullet points of that real quick. I got 11 games. 6 of them came from Shop Goodwill. They were mostly sports titles, and I had to get the manuals for 3 of the games. 5 of the games came from a gentleman, quote-unquote, nearby, who was downsizing his collection. And he was selling 5 games. So I made a little journey Saturday night and picked up those. So now the PS1 long box collection lives on a shelf on a bookcase, and that bookcase is overflowing, so I need 2 shelves. Very excited. But after acquiring 11 games, I'm kind of taking a little step back. And this fucking tire thing, I'm not going to be able to buy any long box games. Not that this ever stopped me before. But that all being said, check out the bonus podcast at the Patreon at patreon.com/2consoles2late. Now, real quick shill here once again for the Patreon, all right? If you support the podcast monetarily, okay, I'm going to send you stuff. I'm going to send you a postcard that I type out a message to you, and then I sign it. And then I've got these little trading cards I got at the Chicago Video Game Summit. I'm going to autograph that because I guess, people collect that stuff. And then I'm going to say your name on the podcast and be like, dude, you're awesome. Or dudette, So, and any money given to this podcast is going to go to one of two things. One, video games, and B, podcast and software. I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to pay for podcast hosting yet. I think it's just a matter of time until Spotify is like, okay, you know what? This free shit needs to go away. You got to start paying. But anyway, so you can support this podcast monetarily. And like I said, it's going to go to good things. I'm not going to be paying my rent with it. Right? I do have a job. All right. So that all being said, check out the bonus podcast at the Patreon and a lot of good stuff happening. Oh, live stream. Forgot about the live stream. This past Saturday, I live streamed PGA Tour 96. That was a pre-Tiger Woods golf game, and you could definitely tell because Tiger Woods and PGA Tour 96 were both developed by Electronic Arts. And you could kind of see that PGA Tour 96 was the bones of Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was on the PS2, so I'm guessing there was more storage space so they could have more courses, because I was really disappointed that there was only 2 courses on this game. And I didn't look to see if you get a certain score, if you unlocked a course or something. So anyway, I played some golf on Friday morning, not Saturday morning, because my brother has a golf tournament every year, and I have to play in that. And when I say I have to, I don't have to. I enjoy, getting with my family and knocking it around. Every once in a while, I have a couple good shots, and then every once in a while, I just sort of duff it. That's real life. As for the video game, I was taking mulligans left and right because that game requires swing accuracy, and I just didn't have it. And I think I'm a student of the Golden Tees and the Tiger Woods when it comes to golf swings. So anyway, you can check that out over at the YouTube at youtube.com/2consoles2late. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk some Parasite Eve. If you go back to episode 110 of the Two Consoles Too Late podcast, nearly 40 episodes ago, it seems like yesterday. Anyway, I played Vagrant Story, and the combat system of Vagrant Story is similar to Parasite Eve in that there's this green globe dome thing, and that really informs a lot of the combat. And I'll talk about the combat later. So after playing Vagrant Story, a big RPG from Squaresoft, you can hear about that. Just go back and listen to that episode. I was excited to get my hands on Parasite Eve. And it's a game that's been on the radar for quite some time, and I'm just finally getting to it. However, I made the sad mistake of getting a copy from the shop Goodwills, double disc, black label for $65. Didn't have the bonus disc for Xenogears, which apparently is a thing. So I kind of overpaid for this physical copy of Parasite Eve. I could have just gotten off the PlayStation Network for $8 or something. So I'm having a lot of buyer's remorse. And then after playing the game, I'm really having a lot of buyer's remorse. This game gets compared a lot to Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil. And those are 2 games that I have not played, and I don't think I'm going to play them. I don't want to play Final Fantasy VII because it's an RPG, full-on RPG. Apparently the graphics haven't aged well, and I think there's been a remake somewhere in all those Final Fantasies. So I'd probably just play that. Resident Evil, it's a long box game, so I'm definitely gonna play it just to play it. But after my experience with Silent Hill, I'm in no rush to play Resident Evil. But Parasite Eve gets compared to those games quite frequently. So Squaresoft was trying to go for that survival horror thing here with Parasite Eve. And I had a lot of, I hate to use the term hope and expectation, going all the way back to episode 110, because after that I thought, oh, Parasite Eve will be right up my alley, right? It's an action RPG, so it's turn-based, but not so much because you can dodge attacks and whatnot. And it's this like modern dystopian setting, which I love that. So I thought I'm naturally going to like Parasite Eve, but I did not. I absolutely did not like Parasite Eve for many reasons, which I will talk about. But one of which is a word that gets used with great frequency, more than a middle school sex ed class. The word sperm gets used way too much in this game. Like the first time I was like, oh, okay, that sort of is part of the plot. And then they said sperm again. I'm like, well, okay. I didn't count how many times the word sperm got used, but it got used with great frequency. And, I'm not like titter, like middle school laughing, like, oh, they said sperm. It just, it was like, stop saying sperm. It's like, it's kind of offensive. And it reminded me of the world of this movie, The World According to Garp. Real quick. So Glenn Close is the mother of Robin Williams. And she's explained to her parents, at the time of his birth, like how she became impregnated. And she says like, oh, I just used this man for his sperm. And Hugh Cronin is this old Rhode Island rich fuddy-duddy. And he goes, don't you ever say sperm in this house again, because he's offended by the term. And it's just playing this game, it reminded me of that movie because they kept saying sperm over and over. So I'm going to try not to say sperm for the rest of the podcast. But if you do play Parasite Eve, it gets used a lot. And one more thing about this game, and this is going to be a stick it to other content creators. This game has been described as a hidden gem. Oh, God, I hate that term. All right. Parasite Eve sold 1 million+ copies. Okay? It has a greatest hits release. All right? There's Black Label, and then there's the green greatest hits release. Okay? So when that happens, it's not hidden. There's nothing hidden about it. Okay? And whether it's a gem, well, that's up to you. I don't think it's a gem. So, anyway, I rail against the term hidden gem. It's just... Stick it! No, this game is not a hidden gem. There's nothing hidden about it. All right, let's jump into this. Parasite Eve. All right, a little origin and context of the game. Parasite Eve began as a novel, which I thought was interesting. In 1995, a Japanese pharmacologist, Hideaki Senna, probably mispronouncing that, published a book called Parasite Eve, which was a science fiction horror story about mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, becoming self-aware. Other than sperm, the word mitochondria gets used greatly in the game of Parasite Eve. So what is a mitochondria for those who didn't pay attention in biology class? A mitochondria is an organelle found in large numbers in most cells in which the biochemical processes of respiration and energy production occur. All right, so there's a lot of science in the plot of Parasite Eve, and it's all based on these mitochondria becoming self-aware. Anyway, so the book goes on and becomes a bestseller in Japan. It was adapted into a film called Parasite Eve. And then Squaresoft, looking to expand beyond the fantasy RPG genre, I guess, purchased the rights to it, and they adapted it into a video game. And a little funny factoid, this is one of the first Squaresoft titles to have a mature rating because they were going for a mature audience. All right, what is the setting and the story of Parasite Eve? I shall tell you now. The game opens on Christmas Eve in New York City. Players take control of Aya Brea. All right? Aya Brea is the main character. She's a rookie NYPD officer attending an opera at Carnegie Hall. During the performance, the lead actress, Melissa, suddenly causes the audience to spontaneously combust. Only Aya survives, and she proceeds to chase the thing that just blew up everybody in Carnegie Hall, except herself. She chases her down a hole. It's very dramatic. And then after you jump down this hole in the stage of Carnegie Hall, absolutely no fall damage, you come across this rat. And this rat turns into this demon rat thing. And the cutscene of this rat transforming into a demon spawn or whatever the hell it is was just a complete fucking ripoff of John Carpenter's The Thing. All right? I don't care. I didn't look at like schmupulations at interviews, but they had to have looked at The Thing and said, okay, can we do that in our video game? Because I think it was kind of like copyright infringement. I mean, it just looked exactly like The Thing. Anyway, so Aya's immunity to the spontaneous combustion sets the stage for the entire story. She learns that Melissa has become the host of Eve, a parasitic life form born from the mitochondria within her cells. Eve's goal is to ignite a new evolutionary era, one that eliminates human control over biology. From there, Parasite Eve unfolds over 6 days. Each day is a chapter in Aya's investigation across Manhattan. And it includes landmarks like Central Park, the American Museum of Natural History, and the Chrysler Building. And these all become stages for the confrontation between science and survival. All right, so I'm going to talk about my experience here with Parasite Eve, and a lot of quote-unquote hope and expectation. This is a game for over a year that's been on the radar, and I really thought, this is going to be right up my alley. Once again, kind of weird dystopian future, action RPG, sort of gets away from the traditional turn-based crap that Squaresoft does. But no, none of that happened. This game is it fell hugely flat. This game is really slow, and I was really surprised by that. It's got a great soundtrack. The graphics aren't too bad. They're PlayStation 1 graphics. They don't age that well. And this is a game I thought I could be done in 8 to 10 hours, maybe like 12, given my wonderful, wonderful abilities when playing RPGs. So I thought, okay, I'll have this game done over a couple days, maybe a week. And a couple of days and a week turned into 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks turned into now. It's been 3 weeks since the last podcast, and I'm sorry for that. I had dental work last week, so I couldn't do the podcast. So that's why this podcast is running a little bit late. But I kept trying, like I do, to give these games another chance. Because when I start coming down on a game and lose interest, I think like most people, I just stop playing it. But I tried very hard right up until the end. Up until last night, I tried to defeat this boss in the sewers. It's this giant centipede. Graphically wonderful. But he just kept kicking my ass. I kept getting poisoned, and he would divide into 4 little centipedes, and then I would just die real quick. And I was really surprised I made it as far as day 5. And this is a double disc game. And I didn't even make it to the second disc. I felt kind of disappointed by that. I felt kind of gypped. The disc 2 remains in its case because I couldn't make it that far in Parasite Eve. There's this one boss. It's this like giant spider. And admittedly, I have arachnophobia, but it didn't bother me that much. I guess it was a spider. It looked like a spider with a brain on top. Anyway, so there's this like rooftop battle against this spider. And it wasn't too difficult. I kept doing some energy shots which is one of your psychic parasite abilities. Basically a magic attack. I kept hitting it with these energy shots, and I would defeat it. And then there's this cutscene where you're talking with Eve, and she, crashes a plane, and you got to, like, get off this roof. Well, the first time, I thought, all right, there's this giant hole in the roof. I'll just jump down the hole, right? No. And then I started to run towards, like, the edge of the roof, and I didn't make it in time. And the plane crashes into the roof and kills Aya. And you gotta restart, you gotta redo the battle. Because it didn't automatically save. And that's when I just fucking lost it. I mean, my son was sitting there and I'm just dropping a lot of F-bombs. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. But I managed to calm down, defeat the boss, and then I had to go to a walkthrough to see like, okay, where do you go after you defeat this boss? And you have to go to this like fire escape. And once you get to the fire escape, there's a little battle that ensues. Anyway, so I made it as far as the sewers. And funny little caveat before I keep going with Parasite Eve, with the sewers level. I've been playing a lot of video games with sewers as levels. Let's see here. Silent Hill had a sewers level. Shadowrun, that had a sewers level. What else? Silver for the Dreamcast, that had a sewers level. And, don't get me started about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So sewers is a common setting in video games. Anyway, so I'm playing the game. I made it as far as day 5, begrudgingly. And I was leveled up. I don't know what exact level I got to, but I had like 507 hit points. So I could take a beating and be okay. It's just, once again, with RPGs, I'm not that good at them. I don't know what the strategies I should be using are, but I'm not stupid either. So that all being said, there was nothing to make me keep playing whatsoever. I mean, once again, the plot is just way too much science with this mitochondria, and they're just hammering it into you about this mitochondria. It's like, shut up. And, they're trying to have this like complex plot, and then there's this whole thing going on with Aya Brea's partner Daniel and his son, and it's just, I don't care about these characters. I just don't. There's this double-crossing scientist who helped develop something. I don't know. Once again, I just didn't care. I was not invested like I thought I would be. So you get all these text boxes, and you know what? Text boxes in an RPG, they're cute and they work for certain games, like Chrono Trigger. Yeah, okay. Works great in that game, but this one is just like, oh God, I have to keep reading? You know what? Just spring for some voice actors. Come on. Anyway, so Parasite Eve, I didn't even use walkthroughs. I just kind of let the game hold my hand and I just went through it as best I could. And I just lost total interest completely. Like I said, it's really hard to organize my thoughts around Parasite Eve. I mean, like, I've had 3 weeks to do it, and I just still am sort of sitting here kind of scratching my head. And that's the best description I can give Parasite Eve, is I'm just sort of sitting here scratching my head like, what happened here, huh? All right, so let's just, once again, through no particular, order. I didn't use any walkthroughs for Parasite Eve. I did use walkthroughs to see how to get off that roof. But I didn't use any walkthroughs for the bosses. The bosses weren't too difficult, but then once I got to that centipede, obviously the difficulty ramps up, and I get that. But once again, I just didn't give a fuck. I was like, all right, well, I can't defeat this boss. I'm going to stop playing this game now. Moving on. This game has a lot of inventory management. Oh my God. It's just, to explain my frustration with the inventory management, it's really hard. So I'll just give an example. You keep getting these keys that you have to use to open doors. And you also get these pass cards. So if you use a pass card, you get this text box or something saying, oh, you don't need this anymore. We're going to throw it away. It's like, okay, fine. That makes sense. But then you end up holding on to like keys from like the Central Park Zoo. And they're in your inventory and you can't get rid of them unless you put them in a box at like the police station. So my inventory, I'm juggling like I've got guns, I've got vests, I've got junk, I've got keys. I've got these like lucky charms that the Japanese scientist keeps giving me because apparently he's got a crush on me. Apparently that's a thing. So there's all this inventory management. And there's an option you can like sort the inventory according to like weapon and whatever. And you're also like, you have these cures, like cures for darkness, cures for poison, cures for stiffness. And it was just, and medicine, of course. You gotta carry some medicine. So anyway, you just amass all this stuff and you get all these weapons, right? But you think, in a traditional video game, it's like, I got the BFG, now I can do some damage. Not the case with Parasite Eve. I mean, I had grenade launchers, I had rifles, I had pistols, and you can using tools that you find in the game, you can like upgrade your weapons. You can take some weapons, you can do a random fire, some weapons shoot more bullets than others, blah, 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 blah. And you can customize these guns. Now, I didn't really know that when I started playing the game. But then after I figured out that you could do that, once again, I didn't give a fuck. It's like, I crafted this grenade launcher to do 2+ more damage and 1+ critical hit. Way to go. That's the kind of RPG shit I just don't care about. I just want to shoot the fucking mutated rat. That's all I want to do. All right? I mean, whether my gun is good or not, I just did not care. All right, I had to catch my breath here because of my frustration with Parasite Eve. And I don't want to be frustrated. I wanted to like this game, but I couldn't. All right, so let's talk about this map. All right. Because this is going to kind of segue back into the whole inventory management thing. All right. So the map of Manhattan, I thought was an interesting take. So the in-game map is the island of Manhattan and all the different locations are highlighted. So you've got like, once again, the American History Museum, the Chrysler Building, Soho, whatnot. And unfortunately, the map is kind of out of scale, and that's just me nitpicking. Like, this is pre 9/11, so the Trade Center towers are still on this map. But the Trade Center towers are just twice as tall as like Carnegie Hall. So there was a bit of a scale issue there, but once again, that's just me nitpicking. So the reason I bring up this map is because one of the locations is Soho. And in Soho, the Japanese scientist has this shithole of an apartment. It's got like a beaten up couch and like a barrel of like trash on fire. Like he's just living in squalor. Anyway, so in this apartment in Soho, he lives next to a gun store and a pharmacy, which I can guarantee you does not exist in Soho. Maybe a pharmacy, but not a gun store. And they make a little comment about gun stores in America. And you know what? I'll take it Squaresoft, America, violent society. Got it. Anyway, so I ran out of ammunition some point, day 3 or day 4. I forget where. I think it was in the hospital. The hospital that is half as tall as the World Trade Center. So anyway, I run out of ammunition and I'm like, poor inventory management. I'm just spraying and praying with these guns when you shouldn't. You should be a little bit more tactical. So I'm thinking, okay, I can go back to that gun store and just get some more ammo, right? No. I have a button for that. Yeah. That's from Press Your Luck. No, so there's no ammunition in this gun store. The first time you go there, you get like a grenade launcher and some ammo. But when you go back to the store, it doesn't like replenish. So I'm just kind of, once again, with Parasite Eve, I'm scratching my head. And it was the same for the pharmacy. The first time you go in the pharmacy, you get some medicine, you get a couple cures for poison. But if you go back to the pharmacy, you can't find any more medicine. I mean, they have shelves of this shit, and it just didn't work. Once again, scratching my head. So that's just like one small example of many in Parasite Eve where I was just frustrated to the point where I had to put the game down. But anyway, there's a couple other little things about Parasite Eve I wanted to touch on. All right, so before I talk about the graphics and the music of the game, a couple more things. So after you defeat these bosses, the different bosses, once again, not too difficult, but once again, I got to the centipede, which proved a little bit more difficult. You get these bonus points, and these bonus points can be applied to your attack meter, your armor, your guns, all sort of different things, which sort of changes the gameplay, which I thought was interesting and kind of gave you, I guess, an advantage, as it were. So as I'm, going, I guess I got to like day 3, maybe day 4. I had this thought, like, you know what? I should just restart the game, start a whole new playthrough and then quote unquote do it right, because now I have a better understanding of the game. I know that you can craft your guns, make them better. I know that, you shouldn't use so much medicine, ammunition. You have to use it a little bit more strategically than just spray and pray. But I just couldn't restart the game. I was too invested, and I thought, you know what, if this is as far as I make it, then that's it. And I'm just sort of reminded of like Steve Jobs, like if you can't pick something up and figure it out right away, then what good is it? Whether Steve Jobs said that, I don't know. Don't quote me or him. And then, as you go through the game, you get these psychic abilities or parasite abilities. I forget what they're called. Things like barrier, detox, slow, haste, confuse. All these like I guess magic abilities. I just didn't use them at all. The only thing I used were the heals, heal 1, 2, and 3, which I use quite frequently, being a bad RPG player. And once again, the energy shot, which is a high-powered shot from your weapon towards usually a boss. I only used it at boss fights. But I had all these abilities, and I just didn't care. And maybe they would have helped me get further in the game. Maybe they would have helped me defeat that giant centipede. But I just by day 3, I was done. I enjoy the soundtrack. I enjoy the soundtrack greatly. So let's talk about the graphics and the soundtrack of this very confusing action RPG. Once again, Parasite Eve uses pre-rendered backgrounds. And this is nothing new. We saw this with Silver. Apparently it's a thing in Resident Evil. But my problem with these pre-rendered backgrounds, and it's a problem I had in Silver, and it's a problem I have with a lot of games with pre-rendered backgrounds of the PlayStation era, is it's very hard to distinguish what objects you can interact with. Because in all these different rooms and all these different places, there's these chests. And in these chests are weapons, ammunition, medicine, blah, 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 blah. Stuff that can help you, but you can't distinguish where the chests are. To the point where every room or every area I'm in, I'm walking around and I'm constantly pressing the action button, trying to find these chests because it's very hard to tell. Which was a huge time sink, I think. Just should have just made it pretty obvious or put some like glitter or something around these chests so that you know that they're there. And some chests are bigger than others. Some are sitting on desks, some are on the floor, and it's just another thing with Parasite Eve, and I'm just scratching my head. So you got these pre-rendered backgrounds. Once again, PlayStation era graphics. We give it a pass because of that. But we'll talk about remasters here at the end of the podcast. But the music of Parasite Eve was wonderful. And composer Yoko Shimomura, who is known for Kingdom Hearts and Legend of Mana, crafted a score that combines classical piano, industrial percussion, and choral textures. It's a wonderful soundtrack. The result was a haunting, edgy sound. I think that completely worked for the game. That sort of gives it that sort of policey, sci-fi, I wouldn't say Blade Runner, but kind of that weird dystopian feeling. So anyway, here's one of the tracks from Parasite Eve. All right, so what was the reception and the legacy of Parasite Eve? So when Parasite Eve launched in Japan of March of 1998 and later in North America, critics praised its presentation and its ambition. Not here at Two Consoles Too Late, however. The game, once again, went on to sell over 1 million copies, okay? Not a hidden gem.
Stick it!
Okay? So I would say that this game was rather successful. Once again, many players saw it as the bridge between Resident Evil and Final Fantasy VII. Once again, two games that I have not played. The game went on to spawn a sequel, Parasite Eve 2, which was released in 1999, and then 2000 in North America. And then a third game, The Third Birthday, came out on the PSP in 2010. But they couldn't add the name Parasite Eve to that game because Square lost the rights to use Parasite Eve, so they had to name it something different. So anyway, let's take a look at Parasite Eve, getting a copy of it over at the shop Goodwills. Complete in box copy of Parasite Eve. The black label is $83.67. The greatest hits is $71.81. Parasite Eve 2 is $118, which really has me scratching my head. So once again, this game commands a high price. And unfortunately, once again, I paid the high price to have a physical copy without the bonus disc of Xenogears. Anyway, so let's see what's over on the shop Goodwills on Auction Alert.
Auction, 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 auction.
Alert.
So if you head on over to the shop Goodwills and do a search for Parasite Eve, usually a single copy would come up. But as of right now, there are no single listings for Parasite Eve. So if you want a copy, you're going to have to go over to the good old eBays. And while you're there, I'm probably going to put my copy up on the eBays just to recoup some of the cost of buying a physical copy of that game, because I'm never going to play it again. I didn't get as far as the second disc, and I'm just, once again, sort of scratching my head and just feeling very disappointed. But sold listings, there are some sold listings for Parasite Eve on the shop Goodwills in the last 30 days. Once again, I got my copy. I paid $45.44. That's without the bonus disc of Xenogears, and I got that from the Goodwill of Easter Seals, Miami Valley. Another copy, true complete in box with the bonus disc, sold for $76. So I did actually learn something doing all this, that bonus disc sort of ups the value of Parasite Eve. Now, why it commands the price that it does, I just am once again scratching my head. I feel gypped that I bought a physical copy. Should have stuck to my guns and just gotten it from the PlayStation Network. So that all being said, you can get a copy of Parasite Eve, just not on the shop Goodwills right now. So in summation, what do we feel about Parasite Eve? If you haven't garnered that information yet this far into the podcast, you haven't been listening. I did not like Parasite Eve. I had a lot of hope for this game, but it just completely fell short. It's very plot heavy. The plot is heavy with a lot of science, which makes it boring. They use the word sperm way too much. I didn't care about the characters, not one bit. I didn't want to see any resolution to the characters or to the plot and see what happens with Eve and her sister being Aya or Maya or whoever. I just didn't care. I just wanted the game to be over, and I had to stop. And as I was playing this game, being a original PlayStation game, being somewhat graphically limited, you have to wonder, will there be a remake for Parasite Eve? And as far as I know, the answer to that is no. Square has said, I think expressly, that they do not want to do a remake of Parasite Eve. But if you go on the YouTubes, there are AI-generated previews of a remake that is just not going to happen. If they did do a remake, I'm sure they would sell, I don't think it would sell 1 million copies, but I think it would sell well. But once again, I don't think that's something Square wants to do. All right, I had to cue up some Metroid Prime music because I've been playing a lot of Metroid Prime in the build-up to Metroid Prime 4. To talk about the sesquicentennial episode of Two Consoles Too Late. Yes, sesquicentennial, the 150th episode of Two Consoles Too Late. I am just in awe of myself that I've come this far. And to put that in perspective, I was like, all right, well, how many songs did the Beatles write? And apparently the Beatles wrote 188 songs. And so 150 episodes, I think is a wonderful body of work. And it's a body of work that I'm very proud of. And I have gone back recently and I've listened to the early episodes of Two Consoles when I was recording through Anchor and the audio quality was for shit. And the show's format hadn't quite, been fleshed out. And a lot of those early episodes, I'm going to admit, I was kind of drunk. And to that, I'm sorry. It would just be me like, I played Metroid Prime and it was great. Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And to that, I'm sorry. But as the show has developed, I've added things like Stick It and Between the Headphones. And now I'm doing the Going Long podcast where, I can talk about the sports and the movies that I talked about early on in the podcast that I realized maybe I shouldn't be talking about that. And as I've done Two Consoles, I've talked to wonderful people. And I would say I've developed some relationships. So many people I've talked to. Lost Joystick Network, Adam Blank, Brian Rigsby, Anthony over at Retro Gamers, so many. And I have a guest coming up for a future episode talking about Metroid Prime 3. And I recognize the fact that Two Consoles is just me. I don't have a co-host, and we're not sitting here high-fiving each other because we played Resident Evil. And there's so many retro video game podcasts out there where that's the format, two guys being all nostalgic about going to Funko Land and buying that video game. That's not here at Two Consoles Too Late. I always wanted this podcast to be somewhat different. And I've shaped the format of Two Consoles from sports radio. Stick It came from listening to sports talk radio. So anyway, that all being said, 150 episodes. And for the most part, it hasn't changed. It's Two Consoles Too Late, all right? You've probably played such and such video game. I have not played this video game. I have no nostalgia for this video game. I played the video game. This is my experience. This is what I learned. Most of the time, I like the games, but recently I'm not having a lot of success. And the outgrowths of content from this podcast, I've created a couple of videos, Flea Wars of me going to flea markets. I'm doing the Going Long podcast of my collection with the Long Box. And the Typewriter Manifestos, just sitting down at a typewriter and just sort of organizing some thoughts. And I've made all that free. And I enjoy creating this content. And I said it once, I'll say it again. When Two Consoles turns into a job, and I gotta wake up and be like, man, I don't feel like playing Goonies on the NES and talking about it. The day that happens is the day I sunset Two Consoles. But that's no time soon. Two Consoles hasn't quite turned the corner. I'm not, endorsed by any products, and I'm okay with that. And if Two Consoles gets that far, great. But for right now, it's still a passion project. It's 150 episodes, and I'd say it's going strong. So that all being said, thank you for listening this far. Stay tuned for more episodes, more retro game goodness. So much to talk about, so much to learn about. All right, I'm going to get out of here and go play some Metroid Prime on the GameCube. Might live stream it, but be sure to check out the Saturday morning live streams of the PS1 long box games. Funny factoid, my Bases Loaded live stream, I played as the Toronto Blue Jays versus the Dodgers. My game went to extra innings and Toronto lost. So I kind of predicted the future. I just thought that was funny. Yeah, but Saturday morning, 7:30. Check it out over at youtube.com/2consoles2lates. All right, 150 episodes in the bag. And to that, I have to sign off like I always do. Have a good one. I love you. Be kind to each other. And goodbye. Motherfucker, I just recorded over episode 149. Well, that one's just lost to the ages. That was Wipeout too. That was a good episode. Shit.